are tuned in to Focus TV One Network, The Purpose Show, and I am your host, Kimberly Trapani. Happy Daylight Savings Weekend, everyone, and I'm happy to talk to you today about anxiety in children over the climate change. And I brought on state advocate in New York and mother for years, Colleen Casey. Welcome, Colleen Casey. I'm glad to have you on the show today. Colleen can't hear me. We can hear Colleen, but Colleen cannot hear me. We're having technical difficulties, so I would encourage Colleen to turn on your speakers. And before we cut, let's cut to commercial, Teflon.
I'm stuck in my ways, yeah, that's for sure. You got it.
Purpose, the talk show with purpose on the Focus TV 1 network, with your host Kimberly Trapani, every Saturday at 4 Eastern Standard Time. Stay tuned.
2, 1, 2. Y'all stay tuned. Having a little technical difficulties. You in tune to the Focus TV 1 Network. The Purpose Show. Again, stay tuned. Having a little technical difficulty. Purpose, the show with purpose on the Focus TV 1 Network.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are tuned in to Focus TV One Network Purpose Show, and we are here to talk to you about anxiety in children over the climate change. And happy Daylight Savings Weekend, everyone. I am so excited to announce I have New York State Advocate Colleen Casey, mother, and she has been dedicated for years to helping children. And I am so excited. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you, Kimberly. I really appreciate your kind words. And I just have to say, I'm so excited about the name of your show, because what we have to do is address this issue with purpose and intention.
Yes, and my job is to talk about what anxiety does today. I'd like to say, if my audience is interested in hosting a show like Purpose, please reach out to producer Teflon Taylor, info@focus.media.com. We appreciate having Teflon every day. Now let's get right to it. We are referencing climate anxiety in children and young people and their beliefs about government responses to climate change. A journaled publication today from Lancet Planet Health, and I wanted to make sure that I properly quote them, from December of 2021. Colleen, can you first off start by defining what is anxiety?
Okay, so anxiety, and let's just preface this by saying everybody experiences anxiety. It's our alarm system inside of us that warns us there's danger and we need to take action. Okay, anxiety is normal when it's in normal realms, and what it is, it's an expectation that something bad is going to happen in the future, not in the present. That's fear. And that is associated with a concrete experience. But anxiety is just worrying about something that may happen. Let's use the example of COVID. Okay, some children's families got COVID, some didn't. But in the news, COVID was all over. The kids had to do masking, had to stay away from school. So an anxiety thought would be, oh my gosh, am I going to get COVID? Even though COVID might not have been in their household. So that is what anxiety is it's expecting something bad to happen in the future.
And according to the Lancet Planet Health and their study that I mentioned, Climate Change Anxiety in Children, the study mentioned that 59% are worried about the climate change. Can you define eco-anxiety for me?
Sure. So eco, if we need to break it down into the two, well, preface and then the prefix, and then the word anxiety. Eco is environment, right? Anxiety is worrying about something happening to the environment in the future. That's what eco anxiety is.
And I've been afraid before and have had nightmares. And I've been scared of the dark as a child. How is eco-anxiety different in children? Can you define how it would be different from standard anxiety?
So if we take the root anxiety, then it would just be the same difference as being afraid, having anxiety over a dog, or having anxiety over a weather disaster, etc. So anxiety affects us all of us in the same way. It ties in thoughts, emotional and physical reaction and behavior reaction. So the thoughts come first, and then we have an emotional reaction, and our heart beats, and our breathing starts to get rapid. And then what happens is we have a behavioral response, and that those three interact, and they can, if we're not de-escalating those, they can escalate.
If I'm a parent, what are early signs and symptoms to recognize in my child if my child is experiencing anxiety?
Okay, so again, let's rephrase that anxiety is normal if it's in normal intensity and normal duration. So let's give an example of a normal first, okay? A normal anxiety for a child going to school for the first time would be, I might be clingy. I might be, oh, mommy, I don't want to go, or Papa, don't take me. I don't want to get on the school bus. And then within a week's time, that starts to dissipate as the child gets familiar and has more information to deal with that, right? So what anxiety is for children is a lack of information and a lack of knowledge, and it reflects very differently in each age group. So like in infancy, for example, we have a fear of stranger anxiety. We're not quite sure if we see somebody's face other than our parents or our families, right? Or loud noises might produce anxiety in infancy. In early childhood, it might be separation anxiety. I can remember when I was bringing my children to preschool. My one child did not want me to leave, but the teacher said to me, walk around the building and look in the window and see how he's behaving by the time you get around there. So he had that anxiety, that initial anxiety to start with, but then by the time I got around to the building, he was fine. That calmed down, right? And so those are things. And then in middle child, it might be the kids are starting to deal with the real world. So they're dealing with, oh, I have to go to school. I have to get a homework assignment done. Concrete things. Now climate change. Is starting with these younger children that are school age children though. And then when we get into anxiety in adolescence, it's more social anxiety and fear of, am I doing the right thing in my social group? Am I doing the right thing to get approval of behavior, etc.? So that's the way anxiety is in each age group. Now, dealing with those things is pretty concrete and very structured, whether it be eco anxiety or it be any other kind of anxiety. We can talk about eco anxiety, but first I think it would be important to have some steps in generally how to handle anxiety, period. Does that sound okay with you?
If I were to deal with a frustrated child who was venting, and
Okay.
those frustrations escalated to inappropriateness, and as an adult, I would react to the frustrations of the venting,
Right.
like we have done in the past. What approach would you take telling me on as to be a parent to handle frustrations when they're venting and out of control?
Okay, so let's include not only parents, but daycare providers, grandparents, caregivers, anybody that takes care of children. The first thing is to educate yourself on what the child needs, what anxiety is about, and how you can stay calm. You cannot get mixed up in the behavior and get involved in this extreme behavior. If you stay calm and talk to your child calmly and say, I'm right here, and just stay with the child to start with, okay? And let the child know you are not going to disconnect from the child. That would be step number one. Step number two would be to validate their feelings. Their feelings, they may not understand their feelings depending on the ages that we're talking about. They may not understand why they're feeling the way they are, but it would help if the parent or the caregiver or whoever's in charge would be able to say, you seem upset right now. Can you tell me about it? Start to ask questions. Can you tell me about it? I don't know.
Okay, hold that thought. we're gonna cut to commercial break, and we will be right back with more solutions on how to de-escalate a child who is exhibiting anxiety.
Purpose, the show with purpose on the Focus TV1 network.
This is Dr. Lee, and you're in tune with the Focus TV1 network.
Join me every Saturday for Youth Talk with the host Chins, that's me, as we talk about what kids like to talk about. Join me every Saturday on the Focus TV1 network, sponsored by Focus Media, focusing on the youth.
Girl, I was always Stan's house, and guess what's next week?
What?
Talkies.
She
You
get some
don't
milk.
know Talkies like
Really?
this, girl. You,
She's funny.
Is your mouth burning? I said, really?
You talk. That's right. You talk. Come on now. You talk. Cause you know they got something to say. You talk. That's right. You talk. That's right. That's right. You talk. Yeah. Cause you know they got something to say. Remember the time? The good old days. Let's bring them back. Brought to you by Focus.media.
Purpose, the show with purpose on the Focus TV1 network.
Colleen, welcome back. And I'd like to say, when I learned at the State University of New York at Albany in my undergrad with my bachelor's degree, that things, when they don't go as planned, some adults freak out.
Yes.
And I'd like to tell you that it's important, and one of my tips, and maybe you'll agree with me on this, that it's important to stay calm in times of uncertainty when we have systematic change that we don't expect. Would you agree, Colleen?
100%, Kimberly. And the way that you go about staying in the calm is to have information. And as adults, if we have information on how to stay calm, why we need to stay calm, what's going on with the children during an anxiety meltdown, that empowers us to be able to stay calm. So then we use the same principles with the children in order to be able to get their behavior down, because you can teach them how to calm down if you know how, but you've got to model it first, right? And so then we need to give information to the kids too. So the first thing is to educate themselves on what anxiety is all about, what anxiety looks like, and how an adult needs to handle anxiety with children, right? Validate their feelings. That's the very first calming and diffusing technique, is to validate their feelings, right? The next thing is help children learn to identify their feelings. What are their feelings? You seem angry. Are you angry? Ask them questions. Solicit information from them so they can diffuse all of that stuff and that energy that's in there that's causing the behavior. And then you can start to talk about things like, well, what do you think we could do about climate change? Kids are amazing problem solvers if we tap into that. And if we don't tap into that, we're losing an opportunity to get calm, right? And then making a plan, having family days that we would do an environmental change. For Christmas, instead of using plastic bottles, drinking bottles, we could all buy each other reusable drinking bottles. That action empowers a child. Those plans empower a child and help to teach the child how to regulate, co-regulate with you, and then later on be able to self-regulate. But the adult needs to know how first so they can pass it to the kids. Communication is key, ideas are key, action is key.
And I have to tell you, with Hurricane Ian, I was up till 3 a.m. trying to coach the President of the United States to help Florida with that trauma. And our hearts go out to Parkland and the people that are suffering through trauma. And we don't know what people are going through. And I have to tell you, it is our job in the community to work together and bond together to understand that people need help in times of trauma and pain. Can you give some sort of comfort in seeing children for the past 40 years and helping children? Can you give some advice to parents that they're not alone?
No. Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, yes, no, they're not alone. Most definitely parents aren't alone. We all go through developmental stages. This is all focused on just human developmental stages. There are support groups out there. There are books out there. There are resources out there. Even with children, I was reading the other day, taking action and learning to actually do what you're saying, to get involved in the community. These two college students were concerned about the environment. So they decided that they were going to collect glass. So they started collecting glass and grinding it up. Then somebody said to them, we could use that ground up glass like sand. In the sand bags that they make to when there's going to be a flood, they border the flood zones with those sandbags. Now they're taking millions of tons of glass, grinding it, bagging it up, reusing it, which is best for the environment, and using it to help with a hurricane or a natural disaster. So those kinds of things, you're absolutely right. Connecting with groups after you've done your work as a parent or a caregiver, then you do your work in the family, you get the family involved, then you get friends involved, and then you start a movement. You're absolutely 100% right, Kimberly. There's power in connection. And there are groups that people can get connected with. Get on the internet. There are tons of groups and resources.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to go to commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about resources for parents and how they can help their children and not go against the grain of their anxieties. Stay tuned.
Join us for Top Prospect Sundays.
Believe in your destiny dreams. We live.
Depression, what a dark place. Nobody really understands. Purpose. Purpose. The show with purpose on the Focus TV One Network.
Welcome back, Colleen. And as I've taught children in classrooms, I learned 40 different perspectives and their parents' different perspectives from teaching in a classroom. Can you elaborate on what resources that are credible that you would have in your back pocket in doing the same for 40 years?
Okay, sure. First, I'd like to say, though, one of the most important things is here, if we're going to help children, is to normalize anxiety, to say it's okay to feel the way you feel and have conversations around it, do an action plan. How are we going to help get kids in the neighborhood together for action, which then diffuses some of the anxiety, which then diffuses some of the negative behavior. There's a lot of resources out there. I was getting on YouTube and just looking up ideas or things that kids have done to help with climate change. And I think you can get some child ideas that way. There's groups online. Okay, that would be one thing. But if you're dealing with your child's anxiety, the first place I would start is to educate myself through your family practitioner. The children's pediatrician should be drawn in every single time when there's an issue with children. You can go to school counselors, teachers, and childcare providers and ask, because if you have registered providers or any kind that are getting any kind of government assistance, there's lots and lots of resources on the New York State site for childcare providers, your county mental health clinics, and also watch for like special education events around education. The National Institute of Mental Health, NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, they all have warm lines and they all have resources, classes, and referral bases that they can at least give you what is in your location as an option. If you get on counseling.directory.org, they provide so much information on anxiety for children. Health.harvard.edu, anxiety in children, phenomenal resource. carescenter.ucla.edu, again, a resource that directs most of its in this section, most of its education around anxiety in children. If you connect with colleges that have psychology departments, usually those will have some address the anxiety issue with children, especially if they're one of their priorities is children. Psychology Today has articles. BBC.com has articles on anxiety. There are books on climate change. ClimateMama.com has books on climate change to educate kids. And don't forget to bring in the connection of the community, their friends, etc.
And our audience, I'd like to acknowledge, said teleteacher. That is true. In New York State, they teach teleteacher. And we've paired with the mayor, and the mayor's pairing with schools. Shout out to our mayors and our first responders who are working together to try to help enable the well-being of children. And anything else before we wrap, Colleen, that you could add to assisting with the well-being of children?
First of all, normalize talking about problems, because problems are people, are humanity, and we have to stop making it like it's not normal. All of these feelings are normal. Secondly, learn about the behaviors your kids are having and the degrees, whether you need to be concerned or not, whether it's a normal degree or if it goes on, if a disturbing behavior goes on for a long period of time, then get in contact with some resource. Don't be afraid to connect, and please learn to communicate and stay calm with your children. You will get much farther in problem solving, and allow the children to be part of the problem solving. They are amazing at it.
Yes, and I'd like to say that there are people in New York State that actually care. And it may not seem like it, but there are people like you, Colleen, that have given to the system for so many years, and we appreciate our support teams. We appreciate our assembly members that have given their time pro bono. We appreciate our teachers. And I thank you so much, Colleen Casey, for your time. Anything else you'd like to tell our audience before we wrap?
Well, I would like to thank you for this opportunity, because this is how we solve the problem. This is how we get children into a better mental health state. And vote for mental health funding, please. We need it. And we need mental health access in schools. That will help too. So thank you so much for what you're doing, Kimberly. This is very
Yes, no problem. And again, our first responders and our government is working with me around the clock, behind the scenes, to try to have a better way. And I thank you so much, Colleen Casey, for your time. Next week, we have a doctor on, Dr. Eric Lee, and we will continue to fight this fight of well-being together. And your abnormal is not so abnormal. God bless.
right.